Second chances. Chapter 2, Realizations. Notes. William finds himself in strange environs, saved from an untimely death by a mysterious woman he calls his angel. His speech is solely in his and Rebecca's mind at the moment, as he cannot speak since his throat is not yet healed, so his words for now will be in italics. Enjoy some light fluff, and some confusion. Deep within the heart of the kingdom William now found himself in, the angel who had rescued him was facing severe repercussions for her actions. Standing in a spot of bright light in an otherwise dark and gloomy room, head bowed as she listened to her lord and father berate her for her actions.
You do not realize what you have done.
The Lord's voice rang out through the halls, quivering in the darkness that surrounded them.
You have stolen from time itself. Do you not think before you act, daughter?
He was dying anyway, father.
She replied forcefully, raising her head to meet her lord's eyes with her own. And in the end, it was he who looked away first.
That was not for you to decide. You do not meddle with time, I have told you time and time again, Becca. Dying or not, that man's fate was not yours to tamper with. We are but shadows in the realms of men. Fleeting. Like ghosts.
So says the man who years ago stole a woman away from the lands of men and saved her, loved her, married her. Her voice harsh as her father's as her gaze narrowed slightly in challenge. The Lord sighed and looked away, knowing she was right, but also knowing that there was a price to be paid in the end for such acts. He did not want that for his only child. To have to endure what he endured. He had loved his wife with all his heart. This man was but a stranger to them both, and yet she had risked the very fabric of both of their lives by saving him. Did she truly know the cost to be paid? She would, now, of that she had no choice. Everything has a price.
Are you prepared to face the consequences of your actions?
He asked with bitterness in his voice as he looked at the one he loved most. She looked just like her mother, which made this all the more harder to bear, to accept. He could not shelter her from what was to come. I am. Her reply was strong. Like her soul. Her heart. Unwavering in devotion to a cause she believed to be right.
Then you make sure that this man knows that he can never go back. He is your responsibility. Your lives are henceforth tied together. He falters, you falter. Understand. His time is shut to him. Forever. He can never go back.
She nodded, her face grim. She knew that was a heavy price to pay on his part, but he would have died had she not intervened. Giving a soft nod, he waved her off.
Then you are dismissed.
She bowed and turned, fading back into heat darkness, leaving her father to ponder both their fates. It was the smell of food that slowly brought him into awakening. Upon opening his eyes, he noticed a tray of food sitting on a nearby table. Soup, by the smell of it, and bread, but oh, did it smell good. It reminded him that he had not eaten in, he couldn't remember. Bracing himself on his palms did he push himself into an upright position slowly, wincing as he did so but then keenly aware that the pain wasn't as bad as it had and should have been. With that thought in mind, he quickly moved the blankets down past his chest and reaching for the hem of the nightshirt he wore, lifted it up just past his stomach. His eye flew open wide at seeing nothing but smooth, perfect skin instead of a gaping wound. His other hand ran lightly over his torso, where he had been stabbed, and he was surprised to find that there wasn't even a scar. He felt his heart rate pick up as he let his shirt fall back in place, licking his lips as he tried to make sense of it all. Unaware of the food that sat so close by now as he tried to think. No medic could have healed him that fast. No medicine on earth existed yet that could leave not even a scar for so deep a wound. How then? His thoughts stopped and his eyes went towards the door upon hearing that soft voice call out to him, and he saw his angel glide towards where he lay, with a warm smile and soft greeting. Hello, William. Her smile was radiant and he found it strangely, almost hard to breathe when around her. She leaned down and fixed the blankets back around him and sat beside him. Forgive me for yesterday. I have been remiss in my manners. I know your name, but you do not yet know mine. I am Rebecca, and this is my home. Rebecca. He now had a name to give his angel, and what a beautiful name it was. Just as breathtaking as she herself. He tilted his head, watching her, wondering of her and where he was, and just a hint of a smirk crossed his face as she blushed. All questions will be answered soon, William. I trust you are hungry. At the mention of food, his stomach grumbled, which made him flush lightly. He was starving. She slid the tray of food towards him and moved things to make it easier for him to reach. Heeding her warning that the soup was hot, he reached for it. He wondered, though, why soup was the only thing given to him, as he was quite hungry, and his look he gave her suggested such a question. She saw it, and replied, You will be allowed more as your throat heals. For now, this will be gentle for you to eat. There was grave damage done to you, and to give you anything more coarse will hurt you rather than promote healing. He nodded and picked up his spoon and began eating, and at his first sip, he nearly threw it all up again. She was right. Every sip and swallow was agony, making his eyes water as he tried again to get some of the soup down. He was so hungry, but how could he eat when just swallowing hurt? Seeing his discomfort, Becca reached out and laid her hand lightly atop his, questioning with her gaze as their eyes locked and held. Seeing him nod, as he leaned back, she rested a free hand lightly upon his shoulder, in a sense to prop him up better, and a small bit at a time, spoon-fed him his food. Though it appeared that she was helping by propping him up, she was also allowing a small portion of her power to waft out of her touch and into him, thus easing his pain slightly. William felt the tiny tremor of magic as it wafted into him, but he had no notion for such things and ignored it. But he found he could eat, suddenly, without great pain, and did so, trying not to make too much of a mess as she tried not to giggle at him. Nodding his head when he was full, he laid back into the pillows with a loud sigh, watching her as she moved and tidied things up a bit and made him more comfortable.
I wish I could talk to you, Rebecca. Figure out all that has happened and where I am. Why you helped me.
He thought to himself and saw her pores in her cleaning and turned to look at him. She had heard him. He was sure of it, but why was there a sudden sadness about her eyes when she looked at him? He noticed it, for as quick as it was there, it was gone the next.
What?
He pondered silently, not even noticing nor making a big deal out of the fact that they were communicating in this way. A way without words. Least on his part.
What is it? Tell me.
His grey-green eyes seemed to probe hers, as if searching for an answer he wasn't sure he was ready for yet. She seemed hesitant, and he slowly extended a hand to her, beseeching her to at least take his offered hand and rejoin him. He didn't know or understand why, but he liked it, when she was near. Seeing his offered hand raised to her, and the look in his eyes as he looked at her, as if asking for her to return to his side, Becca sighed softly and taking 2 steps, reached out her own hand and took his into her own. He pulled her down back beside him, as she searched his face, wondering just how to tell him. Hearing his unuttered words clear as if he had spoken them. She bit her lip and looked down a moment, trying to find the right words to even begin to explain what she had done, when even she wasn't sure exactly why she had done it. William, do you remember the battle? She questioned gently, wondering in his dying state just how much he had remembered of those last few moments. When he nodded stiffly, she felt great sadness wash over her again, and he saw it. You were dying, badly hurt, you remember? She asked softly and nearly winced at his guarded nod. He was tensing beside her, as if waiting for bad news. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Not now anyway. But he had asked. In order to save you, I had to do something irreversible. She continued, looking up to meet his eyes once more. She would look him in the eye as she told him the truth of her actions. I had a choice to make, and I made it. Leave you on that field and watch you die, or bring you back with me.
You saved me. For that I thank you. I am forever in your debt. Why then does it cause you sadness?
His softly whispered words within her mind made her exhale a shaky breath as she took his hand once more into her own.
William, I stole your fate.
From time, she stuttered out slowly. This was harder than she thought it would be. She had never had to explain such before.
Do you know what that means?
When he faintly shook his head, she nodded.
Had I not intervened, you would have died. A horrible death, and time would cease for you. It hasn't, in a way, here, because I saved you. Stole you away in a sense. Healed you as best I could and given you more time.
She was making a rather mess out of this, and he didn't still seem to understand.
Because of what I have done, you can never go back, William.
Ever. She paused when she saw him stiffen beside her. His eyes widen and then furrow as almost 1,000 questions fluttered through his mind in rapid succession, nearly making her dizzy. He was panicking.
I made my choice and in the end, I will gladly pay for it, but you have life again. But to have that life, I stole you from your old one. That way is closed to you now. I am so sorry.
She reached out as if to steady him, and he quickly jerked back from her. His eyes blazing with internal terror that he was trying not to show. Making soft strangled sounds as if he were trying to force his voice to work as he stared at her. His face a mixture of rage, terror and even hate as his jaw clenched and twitched as he tried to speak, to yell, to do something. All the while shouting within his mind, knowing she heard him.
Who are you? What are you? Where am I? What do you mean I can't go back? What have you done?
You know who I am, William. I told you my name. All else will be answered in time. Please. Calm down. You'll hurt yourself.
It was then that he really began to panic, and seeing such a look of fear and anger upon his face nearly undid her. Made her resolve waver. But no, he didn't deserve to die that way. She had made her choice and stuck by it. It was only as he tried to get up out of the bed that she reacted.
William. Don't. Lie still,
she ordered as he breathed in great gaping breaths. His chest heaving as he struggled under her gentle hold. This wasn't right. He shouldn't be here. Where was he? What was happening?
Please don't make me do this.
He barely heard Becca's soft whispered words as she tried to keep him in his bed. His mind screaming every profanity he could think of as well as shouting that he wanted to go home over and over. He was terrified, being healed, being in a strange place. Not knowing what was happening or why. The last thing he remembered was her face, Becca's, sad and remorseful before everything went black again.
I am sorry, William. Forgive me.
That faint voice followed him into the dark, and then, all was silent and still. She had to knock him out. He gave her no choice. When he began to panic in earnest, she knew he would hurt himself and had to make him sleep once more. She felt badly about it, knowing how frightening it was to be somewhere strange and then told that you could never go home again. She should have waited to tell him, but he was a strong man, a stern man, and when he wanted to know something, he would find out one way or another. Better she tell him now than later. But still, she felt badly about it. He had been almost like a wild animal, in his terror, and she hoped that when next he awoke, it would be on better terms. Till then, all she could do was wait. Silence prevailed. All around him, and he was lost to it. Knowing what he knew now, he didn't even want the light to find him again. He had been ripped from his home, taken from the one place he knew, and yet, he had been saved. Brought back from the very brink of death, and given a new chance. Wasn't this what he wanted? Why then, had he fought the knowledge? Fought her? She had asked for his forgiveness, but did she really need to? He had begged for more time, had he not? Such were his thoughts as he slowly hovered on the brink between awakening or fading into the darkness. The choice was now his, it seemed. Should he go back? He still had many questions and she had promised to provide him the answers. Becca. Rebecca. Her face was all he saw as he floated there, in the dark. Her voice rang like sweet music to his ears, comforted him. She had been nothing but nice, polite even to him since she had found him, and how had he treated her? With terror and disdain. He wasn't a gentleman. He was a monster. Really and truly, for he had not even allowed her to fully explain before acting like a complete fool. Why would she ever want to see him again after that? But he did want to see her again. That thought struck a chord deep inside him, and with it, he made his choice. It took him longer this time to return to himself, and he did so with a soft, strangled gasp as his eyes shot open and he looked about. As if called, she was there in an instant, at his side, and when he saw her, everything within him relaxed. Her look of concern was genuine, as he had learned to read people, and could always tell when they meant what they said to him.
Rebecca.
He whispered her name within his mind, knowing she would hear him in that odd and yet fascinating way of hers. Her smile was like the sun as she did indeed hear him, and saw that he would be all right. That smile alone made him exceedingly happy.
I reacted badly. Forgive me?
Nothing to forgive, William.
She answered as she took her seat once more beside him. He was so weak, he suddenly realized, and he looked up at her with a question in his eyes.
I had to.
Her words were whispered so softly.
You would have hurt yourself. I only meant to put you under a few moments. But you have been gone for hours. I was afraid.
She trailed off and looked away, and at that moment he wished he could move enough to at least slip his hand into hers. Make her look back at him again. As if hearing his silent request, her eyes lifted and once more met his.
I truly am sorry, William. I didn't mean for any of this to happen the way it did. I wish there was a way I could have given you back your life without stealing you from it as well. Honest, I do.
She only trailed off and went silent when he made a soft grunting noise and shook his head.
Not your fault.
He raised his eyebrows as if to emphasize that point.
Mine. Only mine.
He took a shuddering breath and felt his lips twitch just for a moment, into a brief resemblance of a smile before it faded.
Tell me where I am.
He tilted his head downward and raised one eyebrow as if commanding her to answer, and that action alone made her smirk.
I told you, you are in my home. In a time very far away from yours. It is hard to describe, so when you are better, I will show you. But for now, that should suffice. Can't have too many shocks in one day.
She chuckled softly.
Why did you save me?
His mind questioned hers, and he saw when she went very still at that question. She seemed to almost close off from him, as if not wanting to answer.
Rebecca?
Honestly, I don't know.
She replied softly, looking over at him.
What I am, what my people are, we travel through your time every once in a while. Watching, learning. We are not supposed to feel for the lives of the humans we guard and protect. For that is our job. We watch out for all humanity, helping those along their paths when they need it most.
She blushed faintly as she spoke, and he listened intently.
I heard your call, begging for more time, and I came to you. I had watched you a great many times, and though I did not agree with your actions, I did not think you deserved such an end. I disobeyed.
Here she raised her face to his fully, leaving no doubt that she was as powerful as she looked. For the atmosphere of the room seemed to shift as she now spoke, and he was entranced.
I was supposed to speed up your death so that you wouldn't suffer, to erase your timeline from time itself. To allow the other side to take you.
She paused and bit her lip again, her eyes furrowing.
But, when I knelt beside you and your eyes met, and held mine, I saw no fear. Watched it slowly leak out of you at the sight of me for you saw me. Keep in mind, humans are not supposed to see us. Ever. But somehow, you did, and there was no begging nor pleading within your eyes. Only acceptance and mild annoyance. I decided then, my path, and I disobeyed, and brought you here. Your wounds were great, but with help, I was able to heal your deepest wound, but your throat, that was almost past my limits, hence why that will still take time to heal on its own.
William seemed to consider this, taking it one step at a time so he didn't panic again. He had seen her. Something had happened the moment their eyes had met and held. He was sure of it. But what? Even he didn't understand that yet. Did he even want to?
What will happen to you now that you disobeyed?
He questioned, which made her faintly smile. Always the officer.
Don't you worry about me,
Becca said softly, something flashing in her eyes that he couldn't quite place.
I will be fine. You just worry about listening to me and getting well.
She teased lightly. She lied, he could tell she lied. But for now, he let it go. There was still so much he didn't understand and she had promised to explain. But there was still that lingering sadness about her, and it wasn't what she explained it to be. He knew she was sad she had taken him from the world he had known, but this sadness that hovered over her was deeper than that. Was she really in trouble? For helping him? What could he do to help her in return? Finding his strength, he managed to lift a shaky hand slowly towards her, till he was able to caress her cheek as she had done his before. Catching her off guard, she started when she felt his gentle touch. That was so unlike him. She had watched him for most of his life, and she knew that deep inside that cold exterior was someone worth saving, and he had just proved it, before dropping his hand swiftly back to his side and his cold shell went back up again.
I am tired. You may stay if you desire, but I must sleep.
Becca tried not to smile at his words. Trying so hard to be who he thought he was while in his own way, asking her to stay with him at least until he fell asleep.
I will stay, William. Rest.
Her words tender in their softness as he nodded faintly. He settled down into the bed once more and closed his eyes again. Sleep was fast in coming, for he needed it to heal, but not before he moved his left hand, ever so slightly towards hers and looped his fingers with hers. Only then did he give in to sleep with a gentle sigh.